Welcome back, everyone, to Reddish Bear Games, where we repair, mod, and refurbish retro video game systems. Today's project is going to be a continuation of our previous project, where we refurbished a Sega Game Gear from no display whatsoever to working pretty well. But the display on a Game Gear, even in its best, is not great. So today's project is going to be continuing that work and replacing the screen. So as today's video is a mod, this will be less aggressively edited than a refurb video would be. So that means it's going to be about as long as it needs to be to show the details of the work, and maybe long or short. I don't know. I don't think this is a complicated mod, but we'll see. This is our new format where repairs repairs will be supercuts, mods will be as long as they need, as I just said, and refurbs are kind of in between. With that out of the way, let's start the thing. So I've already got this guy disassembled. He's got the original screen still installed. Nothing wrong with that. We're going to be installing a BennVenn IPS screen in this case. Why BennVenn? No particular reason. Just thought I'd try a different mod than I've done previously. And the original owner didn't have any preference. Very first thing we need to do, of course, is remove the existing screen, and that's easily accomplished. It's only held on by 4 screws on the back, here, here, here. So we'll just start by unscrewing it. Once unscrewed, you can flip the screen down like so. We're going to do it this way. There's a green adhesive here, which you can carefully peel away using a spudger if you need to, so you can get a grip on it. Okay, there's no actual connections on this side of the board. They're all on the other. In order to nicely remove this without pulling any of the pads, we're going to add a little bit of solder, just a little. If I can get this to focus. Okay. We're going to be adding fresh solder here, and kind of lifting as we go. The point of the fresh solder is just to spread the temperature a little better. Sorry for the blurry camera. It's just the angle we're at. Can't do much about it. Okay. I don't really think there's much point in keeping the old screen, and that the nature of the connector means it would be pretty hard to make any use of anyway, so just dispose of it properly, I suppose. A lot of this discoloring here is the original adhesive, not even the flux that was in my solder. At least I assume so, since I've never seen my solder come out that dark. With the screen removed, we need to take out the backlight next, which is extremely easy. There's just 2 points to desolder. It's basically held in by the wire that powers the backlight itself. These points are very easy to identify. They're all by themselves and the biggest solder points around. And as you can see, basically it falls completely out without any effort. Likely you could just even melt the solder and that would be enough. You don't have to have a fancy desoldering gun. Gravity does the trick there. The other thing they ask us to do is to remove coil L2, which I believe is this. I'm not certain why. I wish they would say why they tell you to do these things, but I'm going to guess that it's something about driving the backlight that we no longer have. Okay, there's the coil out. So we don't replace it with a thing, just leave the empty hole there. What we are doing next is putting in the new screen physically. So let's unpack it carefully. Come on out, screen. Gravity is not enough. Okay, so this is the correct orientation. We're going to be sliding it into the provided frame, but this tab we want to end up coming through, so we peel it just enough to facilitate that. That way we can leave the protective coating covering on the screen while we work and still access it to remove it when we're done from the front. And then we put it over like this, and we can secure this with the original screws. All right, now we have the screen protected, but we can remove the protection when we're done without having to dislodge anything. So this version of the kit came with an easy install ribbon, which we're going to be using. This is basically where we're going to be working. The flex ribbon, you can orient it by putting this little ring over pin 2. That's the Sega Master System pin 2 under the screen. All right, we're going to be working down here before installing the screen. We're going to take our flex ribbon, and this little ring goes onto pin, I think it's 42 actually, but it's the second one in the top row, whatever that number technically is. And then it will align down here to these pins. That's what we want. So probably the easiest thing is just to tack in this pin and then orient it. Okay. Now we should be able to confirm that we're on the right pins down here. I'm gonna guess it's these, because that lines up the nicest, but I'm gonna double check. Looks like that's right. You don't want this, even though this first pin was used and is tin, so you might think it's special. We don't use it. We start from here. So I'm just gonna tack in an end so it doesn't move on me. That's okay, that's bridged for now. And then we're going to add a little bit of flux. We don't need a ton because this is a small area. Probably enough. And then we're going to get some solder on our tip. And then just carefully connect this all. With our flux, we shouldn't end up with bridges, and it should be nicely connected. Looks good. We're going to finalize that a little more. That's a lot nicer looking. It was already working, but you know, we don't want a lousy joint there. Perfect. Gets this flux off my probe. Now, not all these pins are connected. We don't need them all. A lot of them are here just for lining up and support. So we'll test the ones that are connected. We need a ground connected to something. So good. Brightness, it looks like we connect to there. CL2, maybe clock, I don't know. Connected. And you notice I'm testing at the edge of the board. So that makes sure that the connection is reaching the board and not, because obviously it's connected to itself here. That's not what we're trying to test. If I test it here, it doesn't tell me anything. So I want to test there. And just keep going, kind of following the traces to see where it's supposed to connect and make sure that it is connected. Looks good. So that's it for the back, and Now we mount the screen. Okay, we probably could have done this before that, but I forgot about it, honestly. We want to fold this ribbon up and connect it to test points M11 and M8. I assume this is for on-screen controls because those are probably inputs test points. Sorry, I misspoke. We want M10 and M11. So I'm not going to get the microscope out because this is pretty simple stuff. I'm going to tack them down first. And then I'll use some flux to make the joint nice. Good. While I'm back here, I guess I should clean up that flux on that ribbon so it doesn't get everywhere. Okay, back to the back. This guy comes up here, back to here. What we need to do now is we're attaching this to the LCD itself. It's good to align this nicely beforehand. You want those 4 aligned, and you need all these guys aligned. But first, I really ought to put some flux on here so that the connections come out nice. Just put a little bit there, and a little. I think for this, a little will go a long way. And extra will just make the cleanup more annoying. And as usual, what we're going to do first is tack in a couple of points. Probably the SMS pin is again a good candidate. Once it seems everything is decently lined up, let's get those in a good spot. Is this in a good spot? The better this is lined up, the better these little points off to the side are going to line up later. And then let's try this point. As a tack. Okay. That's probably good to hold it in position. What I want to do next is attack the points on the ribbon just in case I need to move the ribbon's position at all. I don't think I should need to, but if I do, it's easier when I don't have all the other points attached. Now, this ribbon is meant for several different possible models of Game Gear. You'll see this little appendage here says T10. Our T10 test point is actually there. So we don't need this appendage, we're using this test point instead. I strongly recommend holding this in place with tweezers while you do this, if you can, because you don't want it to move. Okay. We can just leave this here. I don't think it's going to be in the way of anything. Maybe you want to fold it over if you are bothered. And then similarly up here, we need this to connect to this point here. Here's an alternate T10 for, I assume, yet another revision that isn't us. So again, we can just let that dangle. And here's an alternate point for this connection on a different board. Again, we're just going to let it dangle. No reason to muck with it. Okay. That should be good. And now back over to here. I guess we just finished putting the points in, and not much to it. All right, I think that should do it. And we've got one last little strange thing to do. It comes with this extra flex cable here. And this is for tapping the start button, but we're on the wrong side of the board for that, so, or at least the wrong side to get the obvious test point for it. So what we do instead is connect it to its intended point, and it's the second one in, not the one on the far right. It's supposed to go here. And we probably need a tweezer to hold that down while we... Darn it. All right, it's a little crooked, but that's okay. We can reposition later. And this needs to connect to, well, we can double check ourselves, because the test point for the start button, if we're right, which is M16 on this side, should connect to the side of that capacitor or resistor or whatever it is. So let's test continuity. Sorry, it's not easy to show you this. Nope, there we go. Okay, so it's tough to position a test point on each side of the board, but yes, indeed, we want, I think, the right side of that capacitor component or whatever. And you can't see. Sorry. We're gonna hold it down with our tweezer once it's in the right position. All right, I'm gonna position it with my finger, then pin it down with the tweezer, then tack it with the soldering iron. And that should do the trick. Now, if we come over here, we can straighten this out if we want to. All right. Now we should have connectivity from here to here. which only works if the meter is on. Perfect. Okay, and that should just about do it for this installation. Now we have to hook up everything and see if the screen works, I guess. I'm not going to do a full assembly once again. So I was able to find out what this coil was. This is the part that generates the, what is it, 300 volt? Yeah, 300 volt current for the original backlight. So we definitely don't want that there in our modified system, just because that's dangerous voltage and we don't even have the backlight, so why waste the power on it? I also confirmed that you do not have to remove those fuses. In fact, some people recommend leaving them there to help align the screen to center it. So probably skip that step. No harm if you did take them out like I did. Anyway, we're going to hook this back up, give it one last bench test before we button it back together. That's what we'd expect without a game. Let's get a game on it. Looking good. All right. We'll button this back up and make sure the on-screen controls work and all that. One thing I need to mention is that for this mod, we have to change the case a little bit. This screw boss has to come out. We're just gonna cut it down to the base because otherwise it runs into the top of the screen. If you do that, I recommend putting your finger on top of it so it doesn't shoot into Narnia. I have no idea where that's landed. But now it should fit in here nicely. Make sure the audio cable is routing to the top here. The brightness knob has to go through its slot over here. Make sure you can reach it. Make sure all the button pads were in position. So another modification we need to do to make this fit with the kit is to remove these metal protrusions from the top of this shield. We don't want to entirely discard the shield because it covers part of the game slot from the outside. So instead we're just gonna probably fatigue these off. If you have cutters, that's fine too. Okay guys, this was a bit of a pain. You gotta remove these fingers here because they protrude into the screen. But this is not a flimsy piece of metal like RF shields or something, where if you bend it, it fatigues off real quick. if this, I'm sure this eventually would have, but it takes a long time. So instead I used cutters. I didn't have very good cutters, so it took some doing. But fortunately the ugly part isn't seen by anybody, it's on the inside. Make sure if you end up with sharp edges though, that you file those down, because you won't enjoy cutting yourself on jagged metal. At least I wouldn't. If that's your thing, I guess you do you. But anyway, back to the reassembly. Now remember, we had a security screw in the top there that we cut the boss out of. Okay, and final test. No game. Looks great. And we've got brightness. Volume is working. So there you have the BennVenn IPS screen install for the VA1. It's a pretty easy install, especially with the handy ribbon cables that BennVenn provides. You have to do a little bit of modification if you're using an original case, but nothing too bad. The worst part is probably the soldering of the edge connector, which I guess I don't know, it's moderate. I wouldn't say it's too bad. But I guess now, time to actually play some games. I hear that's a thing you can do with these. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you next time.